listening to the Starzology Astrology podcast, and I am your host, Alison Price. I'm here with my co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming again. In this episode, we're going to be talking about ascendant signs. So we're going to be looking at the 12 ascendants, the 12 possible ascendants, and we're going to give our listeners some insights into those.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics in astrology, to be honest.
Ascendants?
Yes.
Wow. So shall we just be clear about what ascendants are?
Sure, absolutely. So one of the most important of the three, as we would say, the
Holy Trinity.
Holy Trinity, exactly. So the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. If you know nothing else about your chart, these are the things you want to know. This is the essence of what makes you, and you can get into all the other bits and pieces and the whole solar system and outside the solar system and the points and the mathematical blah, blah, blah. But really, the essence of your personality is your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, or ascendant. Same thing. They're interchangeable, the ascendant or the rising sign. Mm-hmm. And what that is it is the first house cusp, and it is the planets in your first house. These are the important things to do with the ascendant. So if you know your ascendant, you know your chart's ruling planet, because that is the planet that rules the ascendant. So for example, if you are a Virgo, if you have Virgo rising, your chart ruler is Mercury, because that is the planet that rules Virgo, and so on. So if you have Aries rising, it's Mars that rules your chart, and then you'd want to look at what sign your Mars is in, what house it's in, et cetera, et cetera. So the ascendant is very important for a lot of different things about determining the basics about your chart.
And to be clear then, your sun sign is very frequently different to the ascendant.
Yes, absolutely. In a lot of cases it's the same, but in most cases, 11 out of 12%
yes,
in cases, it'll be different.
11 out of 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The sign rising on the eastern horizon, it has to do with the moment of your birth. So if you don't know the time of your birth, you won't be able to determine your rising sign. And this is unfortunately the case with a lot of historical figures that we, especially as a research astrologer, will be kind of frustrated by if you look at historical figures, especially like deep history, unless it's someone like a king where they made very sure to know the time of the birth, because astrology was super important up until very recently in politics and in the lives of important people. And so if you look for the chart of Alexander the Great or King so-and-so from whatever, usually you'll actually be able to find the rising sign, because there were astrologers working for the court.
Absolutely.
Or working who would make sure that they knew, because it was very important to know what's the destiny of this person who's going to be the ruler for the next 100 years possibly of that country.
Yes.
And
well, even today, you've got people who we don't know their birth times because maybe they haven't disclosed it. The one guy that comes to mind is Elon Musk. Probably his mother knows, but it's not public information. So
Hillary Clinton is another great example. She's actually her workers or herself. She's a Scorpio, and it's it's kind of funny that she's been so cagey about what time of birth she has, because these Scorpios are known for being secretive, and we just want to know.
Well, this is it. So this is why I tell my clients now that if they have daughters or friends who are pregnant and having kids, get the time of birth, because they might need it later. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first house is obviously the house that's ruled by Aries, but it's the house of like your personality, yourself, and that's the house that the ascendant is the ruler of. So the sign on your ascendant is going to determine not only your first house cusp, but also the seventh house cusp, which is very important because you need to know. That's the house of relationships and open enemies, but also it's the house of marriage, the anima, the animus. You want to know like what's on your seventh house cusp for sure, and importantly, the midheaven, which is your 10th house cusp, and that is your face to the world. So you want to know what's in your 10th house. And it's important to know what time you were born. Really, this is what we're saying. But in another way, it actually determines the cusp of all the houses.
Yes.
So you really do need to know what your ascendant sign is, and it signifies the persona, the personality, your mask to the world, and your first impression, the way you dress, the way you walk, your unconsciously unassimilated mannerisms, the things that other people notice about you that you might not even notice about yourself. When someone says to you, oh, you do this weird little thing with your hands when you're fidgeting, or when you don't know someone's watching, you do this thing. That's your ascendant.
Yeah.
Right? And it's often the...
It's seen. You can see it, right?
You can see it. It's the first impression that you give before someone gets to know you.
Yeah.
So this is why it's really interesting if your ascendant sign is very different in character from your sun sign, because you might think, well, I'm a Virgo and Virgos are this way, but maybe your ascendant is something very different. For example, Scorpio, which is, I'm speaking about myself now.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times as a person growing up, going to school, and people would say, once they got to know me, oh my God, when I first met you, I was so intimidated. I thought you were judging me, or I thought you were such a bitch, or I thought you had the scowl on your face. And I would be like, what are you talking about? I'm a nice person. I'm helpful. I'm like the best friend you'll ever have. I will do anything for my friends. But my Scorpio rising casts a whole different picture. And,
It's
that's
so
the
true.
first thing people see. And they think, oh my God, she's scowling. She hates me. She's judging me.
Yes.
She's got secrets. What's going on there? They don't even want to make eye contact. Yeah. But it's interesting because as an adult, I've come to actually kind of appreciate, perhaps as a Virgo, but also as an introvert, that Scorpio rising is really a really nice protective shell. Like
Yes.
it really has done me a great deal of help, kind of protecting me from unwanted intrusion.
Yes.
Like as an introvert, I do wear headphones usually when I'm out in public, and sometimes sunglasses, and all those funny introvert tropes that sitting on the bus with my sunglasses and my headphones on, and that's a scorpion shell, like don't talk to me or I'll sting you. But yeah, it does do you a world of good to know what your rising sign is,
Yes,
because then you
I
know
agree.
what the impression is that you're giving off. You don't always know.
That's right.
No?
And I always think it's awareness is key with astrology.
Exactly. That's why we do this. What about you?
Well, I'm quite pretty straightforward. It's Leo Sun, Leo Ascendant. So
Amazing. So this exact opposite.
what
really.
you see is what you get.
Right, and it's Leo, so it's all of that.
There you go.
Yes.
It's, that's really what everybody sees. They don't get to see the other stuff in my chart, but because this is quite a powerful expression as well. So
Right.
there it is. Yeah.
Well, one of the interesting things that I've seen in there are some great astrology books about the ascendant, one of which was written by Jodie Forrest, and there are a bunch of exercises that she talks about in her book.
We'll put a link below.
We will. And I believe it's just called The Ascendant, but yes, we'll link to it below. She talks about these different exercises you can do to kind of personify your ascendant.
Oh.
To super fun, that you can kind of bring it to life for yourself, and to really kind of embody it and really
Okay.
understand it. And one of them is, what costume would you wear if you had to dress as your ascendant at a party? What car would you drive? As if money were no object,
Yes.
what would be your ascendant car? And I always think Scorpio rising, well, it would be the Batmobile, wouldn't it? Right?
Would it?
It would be like the black, sleek, based on the old Stingray Corvette. It's got some weapons built in, or the stealth bomber. That's another good one.
Oh my
The stealth
goodness.
bomber is a
Oh my
great
goodness.
Scorpio vehicle. Money is no object, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I used to have a yellow Jeep TJ, and I loved that car. It would go over the pavements and into dustbins, and it was made out of steel. And I could ride it. It was a sporty car. It was a rough ride, but I liked that car. People saw me coming.
Yes.
There was no such thing. Oh, I didn't see you in my mirror. They always saw me, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, just like a lion
Yes.
pouncing. No one doesn't see the lion.
Yeah. I'll have to put a picture of it below as
Yes,
well.
you
yeah.
will. I love it. So what we're saying is that the ascendant or the rising sign is your mask, your persona. It's what people see when they first meet you. And that can be very different from what the real, actual, essential you is, which is symbolized, of course, by your sun sign and all the other stuff. Often it's expressed in a more stereotypical fashion, the rising sign is, than the sun sign. So someone who has Virgo rising can seem more like a Virgo than a Virgo. And this is something that someone with Virgo rising once described herself as more Virgo than Virgo. And I thought that was hilarious because yes, she was, but also that's a great way of looking at it. And another great example that I have for that is Donald Trump, whose sun is in Gemini, but whose public persona is the outrageously, cartoonishly exaggerated projection of his Leo ascendant, Leo rising. And also, I found a really weird correlation with blonde hair and Leo rising. It does not matter what race or ethnicity the person is. there's an overrepresentation of blonde in Leo rising. That's
And I think the hair has got a
hilarious.
life of its own, I've got to tell you.
My God.
It's got a life of its own.
Yeah.
All right, so let's have a look at, let's go through the ascendants, and we'll start with Aries, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more cute kind of thing, and this is, of course, as a research astrologer, I love to sort of like see these interesting little correlations that sort of help to illustrate the points of what I'm researching. And one of the interesting things that I found with searching for people's, celebrities' ascendants. Okay, so there are a lot of people who have won Oscars for portraying a real person. So like, for example, Kate Blanchett won an Oscar for her portrayal of Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator. And they are both Tauruses. Kate Blanchett is a Taurus with Taurus rising. Katharine Hepburn is a Taurus. And when she finally won an Oscar, Kate Blanchett, amazing actress, when she finally won an Oscar, it was for portraying another Taurus, which is fascinating. Sissy Spacek won the Oscar for portraying Loretta Lynn. They both have Virgo rising. Robert Downey Jr. won his Oscar for portraying Charlie Chaplin. They are both Aries.
Interesting.
Yes. So I could go on and on. There are tons of examples of these. One of the funniest, though, for me is Eddie Redmayne, who won the Oscar for his portrayal of Stephen Hawking in the biopic. They're both Capricorns. And Eddie Redmayne famously interviewed Stephen Hawking before he passed away, and obviously right before the movie. And he was so nervous meeting this icon of physicist that when he was trying to make conversation in the beginning of this interview, he nervously blurted out, "We're both Capricorns." And of course, Stephen Hawking, the world-renowned physicist, was not impressed by this fact at all.
Yes.
Yeah. But there you go. Oh, also Natalie Portman portrayed Jackie Kennedy. They both have Scorpio rising, which,
Gosh.
Yeah.
So it's almost as though they can step into that role easily because they understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Tons of examples. Yeah. So let's just go through systematically and talk about each rising sign. I've got a bunch of celebrity examples, and as always, when I spout off all these names, you may or may not recognize them, and that's okay. You can just also Google Aries rising and go into the images and find plentiful examples of any rising sign. And
are we going to put a link to this?
Yeah, I've actually got a presentation that I did a few years back, and I've got the PDF of it. So it's got all my photos and examples. So I will link to that in the show notes. And if you want to just glance through these photos, and you can also do your own research. But yeah, I've got a ready-made batch of all of these great people.
But I'm sure everyone's going to know at least one of the people that you're going to mention.
Totally.
Because it's not that obscure.
No.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So let's have a look at Aries then.
Yes, so exactly, Aries. And I've got a little phrase that I kind of came up with for each of the rising signs.
I love it.
Yeah, so the Aries rising, this is what motivates you or drives you. So the Aries rising wants to assert themselves. And for Aries rising, I've got these keywords. They're athletic, they're animated, they're assertive, they're bold in their body language, in their style, in their clothing, and in their conversations. They may or may not have a loud voice, loud clothing, and a loud attitude. So the Aries motto could be characterized as I gotta be me, or sometimes subtlety. And you can often identify them by a shock of red, whether it's the red hair, red lips, a power suit, red sneakers, or a sports car. So some examples include Bette Midler, Rihanna, Lucy Lawless, who played Xena, Warrior Princess, Errol Flynn, Che Guevara, and Barbra Streisand. So these are like fiercely funny, pioneering women. Bette Midler, Carol Burnett, Joan Rivers, Barbra Streisand all have Aries rising. Shakira, Stevie Nicks, and Bo Derek. So these are like femme fatales who have like just this bold female sort of presence. Rihanna, Lucy Lawless, and Joan Collins, all Aries rising. And on the male side, we have unapologetically manly men. Sam Shepard, Richard Burton, John Voight, Chris Rock, Che Guevara, and Alexander the Great. It's not necessarily the most hunky or pugilistic sort of men, but they're agile and fiery. And dare I say it, swashbuckling, because obviously Errol Flynn, Heath Ledger, Jeremy Renner, and Jared Leto are also Aries rising men.
So we have this word.
Yeah, we have this sort of fiery, agile sort of masculinity. It's not necessarily the burliest, but it's almost like heroic with a slight air of innocence about them. They're just who they are. They got to be me. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So next we have Taurus rising. And I feel like the Taurus motive is to impress you. And so a few people who have Taurus rising are, well, actually, hold on. Let me just describe it. So it's earthy, it's sensual, it's soft-edged. If you look at a collection of pictures of people with Taurus rising, you will just notice their eyes right off the bat. They have these big, there's no other way to say it, soulful, cow-like sort of eyes. Just giant, giant soulful eyes that draw you in. It's their thing. Even when they're babies, like when Dakota Fanning was in Man on Fire, like way back in the day, she was like a toddler practically, but her eyes were just these magnetic orbs of soulful energy that just like made you want to fall into them. These pools of beautiful, like, soulful eyes. And by the age of 10, she had already starred with legends in film like Sean Penn, Robert De Niro, and Denzel Washington. And Glenn Close actually called her an old soul, which is very typical of Taurus rising. Taurus also has a money side, as we know. This is what makes them wear gold often and brag very loudly about themselves. It's the soft cookie dough, but it's also the gold chains and whatnot. So further examples with Taurus rising include Cate Blanchett, Andie MacDowell, Melanie Griffith, Halle Berry, Twiggy, big eyes, come on.
Yes, yes.
Mia Farrow, David Beckham, Jerry Seinfeld, Daryl Hannah, Martin Luther King, Queen Latifah, and you may notice that there are a lot of singers in here. There are a lot of singers because Taurus rules the throat. It is so Liza Minnelli, Mae West, big eyes, George Lucas, Humphrey Bogart, known for his voice, Mr. Rogers, Snoop Dogg, and Queen Latifah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So, Gemini.
Yes, moving on to Gemini rising. This is one that's close to my heart because my mother has Gemini rising.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gemini rising's motive in life is to make connections, to connect with you. And this rising sign is, the men, I think, are going to have to get used to the fact that they will always be called boyish all their lives. And some examples include Ashton Kutcher, who, how old is he? Anyway, he will always look about 20 to us. Jackie Chan, Ricky Martin, Matthew McConaughey, Gene Wilder, Mick Jagger, John Denver, and Tony Blair, who, whatever you think of him, he does have a boyish quality to him.
Call me Tony.
Right, there you go. And my favorite example, which is a very strange one, but you will understand this, and also there's a new movie coming out about him, which may bring this a whole another generation to appreciate. But J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atom bomb, has Gemini rising, and he had this sort of gaunt, kind of sepulchral sort of like quality to him. But at the same time, if you actually watch any videos of him talking, not just, of course, the one video we've all seen where he talks about being the and now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. But if you see any other interviews with him, he's got this boyish, twinkling quality and this eternally youthful smile, which are utterly charming and very appropriate that he was very serious in talking about the first atomic bomb test. But some 20 years later, he was discussing his research when he was teaching physics at a university later in life. His smile in this interview was so enchanting, and his long, graceful hands fluttered around excitedly as he spoke, which is also a very Gemini rising thing, to speak with your hands. And he had to sometimes clasp them between his knees to keep them from fluttering around as he talked so excitedly and animatedly about his life's work, which I think is also a very universal thing with Gemini rising. So that's the men, but the ladies also have a very wonderful, enviable quality, which is the most adorable pointy little eyebrows. And some examples include Michelle Pfeiffer, Pamela Anderson, Sandra Bullock, and Drew Barrymore. Oh, and not to mention Helen Mirren.
Okay.
I mean, talk about eternally youthful.
Yeah.
So these people may have grown up hating to be called cute, like my mother, but they will always look mischievous, impish, irrepressibly charming, and often cute and youthful their whole lives. So this sign, when it's allowed its free reign, can light up a room like no other. Sometimes people will describe Scorpio rising as being on the warpath, but Gemini rising has the opposite effect, where it can actually like lift others up and just make them laugh despite themselves. Very good examples of this are Jackie Chan or Drew Barrymore when they're in top form. Think of Drew Barrymore like flashing Letterman on his desk, like standing on his desk. Who else could get away with this? No one thinks of her as crass or awful for doing this. It's adorable. And that's Gemini rising for you. So moving on to Cancer rising. These are the people who want to take care of you. This is the motto of Cancer rising. And some examples include Dalai Lama, Angelina Jolie, Bill Gates, which you may not think immediately of being nurturing, but he has done more with his foundation to solve some of the world's thorniest problems with infectious diseases and malaria in Africa. And this has been his second half of his life's work. And if you look at his face, you will see, especially later photos, this sort of benevolent smile and these great round eyes. And not so much with the men, but with the women, you really see this just lush femininity, this almost sort of motherly... Curvy. Yeah, there's no other way to say it. So Angelina Jolie, Julia Roberts, Liv Tyler, Jane Mansfield, who she's epitomizes Lisa Bonet, Elizabeth Hurley. If you've ever sat through a movie and found yourself transfixed by the actress's lips on screen, there's a good chance that she had Cancer rising.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found myself watching every single movie Angelina's ever been in feeling the same way. And Pretty Woman 30 years ago, same. The men also have a tendency to be known as just a bit too pretty. It must be tough as a Cancer rising male to have the sign of the moon and motherhood and home and hearth on your rising. But some of them actually find a way to own it. And these include Mel Gibson, Kurt Russell, John Travolta, Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Michael, the rest in peace, Rudolf Nureyev, the wonderful ballet dancer, and going back a little farther in history, we have the mad, bad, and bisexual Lord Byron. Look at any photo of Lord Byron and you'll be like, oh, okay, Cancer rising in a guy. Yeah, voluptuous, beautiful lips, the tousled mane of dark hair, and the brooding eyes, and there you go. So they have this I won't hurt you sort of like affect that they project, these soft, inviting sort of eyes, and this is the men and the women, and this magical sort of serenity that they project.
Okay.
And this includes Richard Gere, the Dalai Lama, Jim Henson, Bill Gates, and Albert Einstein. They all had Cancer rising, and they all, I think, definitely projected this sort of, I won't hurt you, sort of like, oh, let's rise to the next level sort of energy. Cancer.
Good.
Yeah. So moving on to the Leo. And what I can, I almost want to say, guess what the motto is, but it is to be the greatest. To be the greatest.
Yeah.
And of course we have Muhammad Ali, whose literal motto was, I am the greatest.
Yes.
Yeah. The motto and mission of Leo rising is to show you that they are the greatest in whatever their category is. And a number of them have absolutely gone on to become the best in their field, including Pablo Picasso, Muhammad Ali, Arnold Palmer, who was nicknamed the King of Golf, Bobby Fischer, the best of the chess, masters, and a lifetime of achievements in their field has actually made them like royalty. So this is like the king of the jungle, obviously. Oh yes, okay, and bonus points for the Muhammad Ali thing, because Leo rising native Will Smith won his Oscar for portraying Ali in the 2001 film. So this is another example of people with the rising sign who go on to bring that portrayal to life in a way that someone else could not. Leo rising actors tend to win a lot of gold, and these include Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson. These are both Tauruses with Leo rising. Weird coincidence. And they have each 4 Oscars and a staggering 20 nominations between them. They are the most nominated and the most Oscar-winning men. Meryl Streep, another Leo rising, has 3 Oscars and 20 nominations, all her own. Glenn Close, Jessica Lange, and Reese Witherspoon all have Leo rising, and all Oscar.
And they're all fabulous
huge
actresses.
Contenders, yes. And also very blonde. A lot of blondes in there. And I mean, these are wild, like, female lions. They're the real badasses of the jungle. It's the male lions. They have the manes, but it's the women who do all the work. We know. A lot of Leos end up being known for their hair. And for fun, try to list all the Leo rising people you can identify just from a caricature of their hair, just a line drawing. And I can think of Marilyn Monroe, Donald Trump, Alfred Hitchcock, Tina Turner, Carol Kane. All of these people, you could just like squiggle their hair and it's like, oh yeah, I know who that is. Their pride can be their Achilles heel as well. And some of these people are well known for their egomania and trash talking. Trump, I'm looking at you. But obviously, a lot of them have a really important thing behind that. Like Richard Branson is another Cancer with Leo rising. His mane of white blonde hair and devil-may-care adventure style. He's the only billionaire I can think of who always looks like he's having a good time. And that's Leo rising for you.
So let's have a look at Virgo.
Virgo rising. Virgo rising always wants to be right. That is their motive. So, of course, we have Steve Jobs, Pisces with Virgo rising, right up there. And the uniforms are very big for Virgo rising. They just want to make it simple. Yeah, exactly. And just pare it down to the basics. So it may not always be just like about a black turtleneck. It could be a hoodie, for example. Mark Zuckerberg also has Virgo rising, and he's well known for the casual workplace. Julie Andrews was well known for playing a nun and a know-it-all governess, and she has Virgo rising. Speaking of know-it-alls, other archetypal nerds who have Virgo rising are Steve Wozniak and Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs. They all have Virgo rising, which is weird. So it's a calculating and perfectionistic rising sign. So sensitive feminist icon of the Piscean persuasion, Kurt Cobain also had Virgo rising. So grunge famously sort of overtook in the early 90s and late 80s after the excesses of 80s and 70s glam rock. So grunge was seen as sort of a backlash to that. It was like simplified, getting rid of all the sort of excess, and that's a very Virgo thing. So grunge might not right away seem Virgo because it's kind of like dirty and grungy, but at the same time, if you think about it, it's minimalist. It's using like what's already at the thrift store. It's using less. It's humble and unassuming, and that's very Virgo. Madonna is a Leo, obviously, but she has Virgo rising. Probably. This is also, one of those not so well-known times of birth. But if you think about it, she gained her legendary fame with the album Like a Virgin.
Yes.
Virgo rising. This is another reason I would argue for her ascendant being Virgo is her inability to back down from a verbal challenge, which is very Virgo. We do love to argue, and she very much wanted to be taken seriously, which is also a Virgo buzzword, as an actress, and she campaigned for years to bring Evita to the big screen, which she eventually did, and prevailed as an actress and not just as a rock goddess. More Virgo rising actors are seen as sensitive, nice guys than any other rising sign. Included among these are Henry Fonda, Adrian Brody, Tom Hanks, Michael J. Fox, and Kevin Costner.
Nice guys.
Nice guys. And the women, whether they are classic beauties or character actresses, are often characterized by their intelligence, and these include Faye Dunaway, Marlene Dietrich, Uma Thurman, Kathy Bates, Helen Hunt, Stacey Spacek, and Charlize Theron, who quote-unquote overcame the limitations of being a statuesque, stunning blonde to play the role of female serial killer Aileen Wuornos and win her Oscar. And that is a very Virgo thing, to dress down and to be serious and to then win the accolades that way. Libra rising. Their modus operandi is to make you love them.
Okay.
Yes. Whatever their race, nationality, or country of origin, Libra rising natives often embody the kind of Venusian ideal and pure mathematical symmetry that transcends all classifications and stereotypes. People will say, I don't normally find insert race, category, nationality, or whatever attractive, but in this case, I'll make an exception. And I will give you examples that tell you that this is true. So, Sidney Poitier, the very first black actor to ever win an Oscar. Javier Bardem, the first Spanish-speaking actor to win an Oscar. Denzel Washington, and Beyonce. And this is a great example of which she's been called like the Black Barbie. This may be not politically correct, but there was a Saturday Night Live sketch in 2016 where white people were quote unquote shocked to learn that their favorite singer Beyonce was black. Oh my God! So this is just transcending all the categories and just being utterly beautiful, and nobody can argue that Beyonce is a goddess, right? Interestingly, JFK, the most photogenic of all the U.S. presidents, has Leo rising and had to overcome the stigma and apparently had the odds stacked against him of being a Catholic head of state at the time. But, as uncontroversial as that may sound to modern ears, what really won him the election was his good looks, really, against Nixon, who was, notoriously not great looking and just kind of a sweaty mess on television. And JFK, is the one who ends up on all the T-shirts and in all the memes. And
even now,
exactly.
Okay.
And for the whole 3 years he was president. He's the most photogenic, the most represented in movies to this day, even more so than Abraham Lincoln, which is hilarious. Rock Hudson was a Scorpio with Libra rising and was so universally beloved as a 1950s icon of romantic comedy that his closely guarded secret homosexuality was shocking to women everywhere. He almost single-handedly brought the epidemic into the mainstream when he passed away from AIDS in 1985, and this forced the Reagan administration to approve more funding for research into the disease, because this wonderful icon of 1950s masculinity had died from AIDS, and forget the fact that all these other millions of people had passed away. Rock Hudson was so beloved that this got the ball rolling. And this rising sign of Libra sort of imparts symmetrical features and a broad appeal. Actresses and singers often come across as the perfect good girl or good boy. These include Jennifer Aniston, Elizabeth Montgomery, Sally Field, Paula Abdul, Britney Spears, Debbie Reynolds, etc. And they often have to go to great lengths to break the mold of being seen as the good girl, and then they go off and do something kind of edgy to sort of break out of that Libra perfection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Scorpio up next.
We are moving on to Scorpio rising, and this is one that's near and dear to my personal heart. Scorpio rising, their modus operandi is to seduce you. Of course. They are self-contained, knowing, and intense. Their eyes give you a psychic prod to be on the alert. You're being scrutinized, but you'll only get back what they want to reveal. Fail to respect their boundaries and get ready to get schooled. Multiple Scorpio, including rising, Bjork, the singer. If you want to see Scorpio rising in action, Google her pushing her baby newborn through a crowded airport. There's a video of her pushing her stroller through this airport. Throngs of press and overly eager reporters are trying to interview her. One reporter reaches over the baby to stick a microphone in Bjork's face and gets stung with the Scorpio tail. Bjork literally lunges and tackles this poor woman. And really, who can blame her? My God, don't do that. Don't do that. It's awful. Yeah, but that's Scorpio rising for you. Just they can put up with so much, and then it's like snap. Scorpio rising has sex appeal. Maybe you've heard. Maybe this is known. Scorpio rising people have to get used to other people assuming they are up to no good, scheming to steal their boyfriends or corrupt their children. And often from a very early age, they have this reputation. Good old Sigmund Freud might have called that projection, and he should know because he had Scorpio rising himself. Who else could have told the entire world that they were all secretly obsessed with sex and death? And they didn't deny it. They actually believed him. And this is back in the Victorian era. This is Scorpio rising being convincing. What motivates Scorpio rising isn't just sex and death, but an extreme survival instinct that says your very existence may depend on your ability to mesmerize others and bend them to your will. This usually means either seducing or scaring the shit out of them. But failing that, sailing underneath the radar. What they can't see, they can't destroy. So this is the stealth bomber, again, as a metaphor. They can be kind of ruthless, single-minded. The other Scorpio rising people include Margaret Thatcher, Hillary Clinton, which, of course, we assume probably. It has to be Scorpio rising, though, because how else is she that secretive? Vladimir Putin has been widely reported to have Scorpio rising, but again, the rating of that is, very bad. So we're not quite sure, but he'd want us to think he had Scorpio rising, wouldn't he? So we're not sure. Oliver Stone, the king of conspiracies, has Scorpio rising. So does Katharine Hepburn, a Taurus with Scorpio rising. She was famously 11 years old when she discovered her brother's body after he probably accidentally hung himself, but it was widely thought to be a suicide, and she's held this with her all her life. He was 13 and a Scorpio, and for most of her life she told people that his birthday was her birthday. So as a Taurus, she adopted his birthday. She's got Scorpio rising, though, so this is a very interesting dynamic there, and very Scorpionic in the entire sad tale of that. But it's interesting that she adopted this sort of identity as a mask for herself when she actually has Scorpio rising. And she was also the first actress to popularize wearing pants, and the 1930s and 40s when women were supposed to wear skirts and dresses, and she was a smartass and a wonderful Oscar-winning icon as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Scorpio rising.
Quite dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to
Sagittarius. Their modus operandi is to always be in motion.
Oh.
Yes. So For men, this is about the Marlboro Man aesthetic. Rugged, outdoorsy, adventurous, eclectic, Brad Pitt, Marlon Brando, Jude Law, and the thinking man sex symbol for women. So we've got Scarlett Johansson, Jennifer Lawrence, Jodie Foster, and Sarah Silverman. They all have Sagittarius rising. Sometimes this can be taken to the extreme in an over-the-top sort of style like Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix, Elton John, Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, Crocodile Dundee. These are all, it's this excessive ideal of like an outdoorsy sort of Crocodile Dundee, obviously.
Yes.
But even the women, we've got Jamie Lee Curtis, Jennifer Lawrence, Princess Diana, Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman, was Sagittarius rising. Hilary Swank, who came to prominence portraying a trans woman like way back in the day. Goldie Hawn, and Bridget Bardot and Raquel Welch, who also had incredibly athletic physiques and brought this to prominence in the 70s, but before the fitness craze even was a thing. They also tend to have very public struggles with their weight, some of them, and Jupiter rules their ascendant. So the trappings of fame and the industry of superficiality can really conflict with their ideals. We have a lot of people who have had struggles with their fame in Sagittarius rising. So Eminem, Oprah Winfrey, who struggled with both fame and weight, famously, Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor, Jim Morrison, Sinead O'Connor, and Princess Diana. And in some of those cases, struggle with fame may be putting it a bit too mildly because it eventually was their destruction. Yeah. We also see public activism on a grand scale in some of these celebrities. So Mother Teresa and Brad Pitt. Obviously, like after Hurricane Katrina, Brad Pitt built housing and was hugely influential in bringing to light all the stuff that was going on in New Orleans. Sinead O'Connor trying to expose the Catholic Church sexual crimes. Oprah's famous audience giveaways, with generosity being a very Sagittarian thing, and also her benefactor in Africa and making all these schools famous and bringing money to Africa. And of course, Princess Diana's humanitarian works are legion and well known.
Yeah.
Moving on to Capricorn.
All right.
So they want to intimidate. There's no other way to say it. Yeah. Capricorn rising seems to bestow some of the most perfect features this side of Libra rising. There are some amazing supermodels. Giselle, Naomi Campbell, Catherine Deneuve, and Paul Newman are among the Capricorn risings. But it's impossible to look at these people without thinking the word chiseled, which is interesting because stone is a symbol of Capricorn. A few other examples include Tom Selleck, Clark Gable, Sean Connery, Charles Bronson, Daniel Day-Lewis. Yep. And these are the manly sort of like, just chiseled manly kind of men. And Capricorn rising is all about sharp angles and hard edges, cheekbones like diamond facets. Monica Bellucci, Carmen Electra, Megan Fox, Lenny Kravitz, and Gwen Stefani all have Capricorn rising. Far from being softened by time, age seems to make Capricorn rising defy gravity as stubbornly as if their faces were actually extensions of their personality. More examples of this include Anthony Hopkins, Dustin Hoffman, Carrie Fisher, Jane Fonda, Susan Sarandon, Sophia Loren, and Joan Jett, who is an amazing badass rocker chick who I actually saw in concert when she was well into her 50s.
Jet and the Blackhearts,
just absolutely brought the house down. Yeah. Better with age.
Better with age, Capricorn.
Yeah.
There you go.
And now we move on to Aquarius rising. And this is the sign that wants to express their originality at all costs. They're iconoclastic, eccentric, quirky. Funny how the words that describe the Aquarian character are words you normally wouldn't be using to describe someone physically, but they fit the aesthetics of this group very well. So some very obvious, bordering on too easy examples include David Bowie. He's just the absolute perfect example. The spiky Ziggy Stardust hair, the lightning bolts painted down his face. Lightning is also a very Aquarian symbol. The skin-tight leather pants that span half a century. He was always a weird-looking guy, but the razor-sharp cheekbones and the angular, almost androgynous, almost extraterrestrial physique is perfectly,
and the odd eyes. Right?
Yes, oh my God, the eyes, exactly. So, the mismatched eyes are actually, people don't know this necessarily, maybe most do, but it was actually caused by a fight with his best friend when he was in junior high school. Yeah, and the men actually remained friends for years despite the extreme and lasting impact of that altercation. No pun intended. So in a similar vein, we have more odd-looking ducks. Abraham Lincoln, Aquarius rising, Whoopi Goldberg,
Right.
Jay Leno, Willem Dafoe, Gene Hackman, Janis Joplin, and Meatloaf. All a little odd-looking.
A little odd.
Yeah. Aquarius is another of those youthful air ascendants. They're less conventionally attractive than Gemini or, of course, Libra, but many of them are very conventionally attractive in just a little bit of a weird way. Kim Novak, Jim Morrison, Christina Aguilera, Adele, and Russell Crowe are among the examples I would think of. And averageness may be mathematically correlated with attractiveness. Symmetry equals good breeding stock, supposedly. But OkCupid has done a study and found that people who are rated very, very high and very, very low out of the 1 to 5 attractiveness scale are those that have the most likes and the most, it's not the average of 3s and 4s, it's the 1s and 5s who get the most responses. So the outliers, exactly. And Aquarius rising is definitely all about being an outlier. Pisces rising, we've reached the final rising sign. So Pisces rising's modus operandi is to merge and submerge. So I don't want to necessarily say that Pisces rising is the sensitive guy rising sign, but the names are they make it clear. So Robert Redford, Dr. Phil, Henry Fonda, and Ryan Gosling are all in this group.
Okay.
I mean, say no more, right? Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, and Alexander McQueen also have Pisces rising. And, this brings in sort of a dark side because there's a lot of insecurity and sort of addiction and intensity that goes along with Pisces, and these lives are not necessarily easy. There's a constant battle with the difficulties of life and fame. Johnny Cash is a great example. He had Pisces rising and he struggled with addiction and the difficulties of fame, and he dressed in black, the man in black, right? But he, in his relationship, found a rock to cling to and a light to guide him, and that is something that's really important in a lot of fame, but also specifically in Pisces rising. And when they can find hell and crawl themselves back and then sing to us about it, they can be some of the most affecting artists of our time, of any time. That is Pisces rising.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How even the groups of people that you're mentioning look similar, and that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. One of my favorite sites, and this is going back quite a ways, was a site where you could search faces by sun, moon, and rising sign, and it's kind of fallen into it's basically like not really a thing anymore. But I think there are a lot of Facebook groups now where you can actually search this, and you can see huge photo collections that people have uploaded of their combined Holy Trinity, and specifically the rising sign. And you can really see just in a collection of photos the unmistakable similarities with each of these rising signs, and just even probably Googling like Capricorn rising, whatever, and just seeing like all the photos that come back. It really is very convincing and very interesting. It's one of the,
it is.
As a research astrologer, it's one of the most interesting things for me is just seeing these vast collections of photos that kind of like make you go, wow, yeah, there's something there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the face we show that people, isn't it? The ascendant,
Totally. And aside from just famous people and whatnot, in your personal chart, one of the interesting things to me that the ascendant does is it's not said to necessarily be super important in relationships as like the moon and Venus and Mars are, and like what you are like in a relationship, or what you attract or who you're attracted to. But often we tend to admire people whose sun is in the sign on our ascendant. So if you have Scorpio rising, for example, like I do, you may find yourself attracted to people who have the sun in Scorpio. And sometimes that can be like a crazy magnetic, thing. And I've often found that the exact degree of my rising sign, for example, is the exact degree of the sun of my partner, who I've been with for now 25 years. And when we met, I wouldn't say necessarily it was love at first sight, but it was pretty damn close. And it's like a tractor beam. Like your rising sign can actually just be like a tractor beam. And
exactly.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that ascendant, when you know your ascendant degree, and people have got planets or points on it, you have that immediate connection to that person. Right. You don't have to even pussyfoot about.
Yeah.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. You just might look across the room and just make eye contact, and there's something there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow, 25 years, eh?
Yes.
Wow. So, Arwynne, do you have any reference guides that you could offer our listeners?
Absolutely. Well, earlier we mentioned The Ascendant by Jodie Forrest, and that's the one that has all the fun exercises, like what would your car, what's the walk, what's the costume of the Ascendant, and just really neat sort of very hands-on ways of sort of getting your mind wrapped around what the Ascendant means in your chart.
Okay.
So that's a really great one. That's probably the number one I would recommend. Also, The Inner Sky by Stephen Forrest is a really great book that talks about a lot of astrology stuff, but it's very basic, and it does go into the Ascendant in great detail. Really, really good, solid information. And another one that I found really fun is called Rising Signs by Jean Avery, and that's Jeanne, Avery. We'll link to all these in the show notes.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's all about, obviously, the Ascendant, and it's just
that's great.
Really nicely written, really accessible, sort of basic books.
That's great. Yeah. So our listeners will be able to go and search those and explore their ascendants more. Yeah. Because hopefully most people who are listening do know what their ascendant sign is. All right, Arwynne. Well, this has been a very interesting episode where you've gone through everybody's ascendant, and I'm sure everyone can relate to people you've mentioned. There's bound to be someone in that group that we've heard of.
Absolutely.
Because I have to admit, I haven't heard of everybody, but I've certainly heard of a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's been great. I want to thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you.
I've loved being here.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.